So thinking about this continuum, about the steps and your purposes of assessment will help you complete some of the pieces of your session plan that are required for this course. So if you recall, you have your session, your summary, which is essentially the topical area you were assigned, the goals and the learning objectives that you're developing, some of the learning activities that you're creating for your particular session, and then thinking about what ways might you assess your learners both during that session but also following it. So this forces you to think about with your colleagues some ways that you might be able to arrange and develop a strategy that gives you and your learners the information that's needed for their growth. So let me pause for a minute because that's a lot of information, and ask if you have particular questions on any piece of that, any parts of the steps, any of kind of that overarching framework, any questions you might have. Dr. Hinnock, thank you.
Okay, thank you. As we have seen, the process of teaching takes a bit of time, and that time might not be available, especially when we give block courses, which should be started and finished within, say, 1 week or 2 weeks. So how do you think how should we approach the assessment, and how should we address our goals?
Great. So if I understand your question, it's about how you fit in some of these assessment strategies in a short window of time, right? You have a discrete time period, and how can you effectively assess your learners? Great question. And this is something that we'll actually work on at the end of this session, which is developing a rubric. And that becomes a way that you can more quickly and systematically assess your learners, so it doesn't take a large amount of time on your part, but it feeds in the information on your teaching and on their learning that can help improve the overall course. There are ways that you can think about some of these things that are very quick. If you'll recall, I think it was in either video 1 or video 2, where I asked the question, does this make sense? And I asked for you to say, yes, it makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense. I need a little more clarity. So that is a very quick way to assess with your learners whether or not they're grasping the concepts that you're presenting. It doesn't take you time apart from maybe 30 seconds or a minute. It could take you more time if you have to describe a concept again. But essentially, if that concept needs to be described again, that's the moment to do it, so that you're not continuing your presentation with assumptions that your learners have grasped that content, right? So you can do some low stakes assessment, some formative assessment throughout your teaching sessions to get a barometer on the learning that's taking place. Does that make sense?
Yes, but my problem was regarding also summative assessment, because at the end of the course, they need to be graded.
Yes.
And so concerning that, what do you think?
Great. So we will also describe that. So summative assessments can take a number of different forms. You know, they can be a multiple choice exam. They can be a presentation, a project, you know, depending on the content of your course. It's very much driven by your content. But thinking about time and efficiency can produce a number of different, should influence how you're selecting your particular summative assessment, right? If you don't have a lot of time, sometimes a multiple choice final exam is a good way to know whether or not your learners have mastered that material. If you're in, teaching at the bedside, a simulation, some kind of activity where they demonstrate their skills is another way to evaluate your learners at the end. But it really depends on the course content and how much time. I'm a big fan of presentations and using the students to teach each other, because in that way you can assess the student while they're also imparting knowledge for their peers. So it's almost like a win-win. So you're seeing, have they really mastered this knowledge, skills, attitudes, and then they're actually teaching their colleagues as well, or their other students. And that can be one effective way to kind of accomplish two goals at once. But